Now my great pleasure to introduce to you Caleb Callahan. Caleb is a shareholder in Valmark. He is also the president. He's the chairman of the Valmark Global Gift Fund. He's been with us 19 years, and he has helped build Valmark into what it is today for all of you. Please join me in welcoming the president of Valmark, Caleb Callahan. Caleb, good morning.
Well, good morning. So last year at this time, I took you back to the 9th century BC, and we talked about the prophet Elisha. And if you recall from that story, true story, from ancient scripture where I believe there's a lot of wisdom, whether you're a person of faith or secular, there's great wisdom in ancient scriptures. And if you recall, 850 BC, Elisha had been asked to heal the captain of the Syrian army, Naaman. And if you remember, the theme of the presentation last year was following Naaman's instructions to just go dip in the river. And he almost didn't do it because it was too easy. And the theme of last year was do the fundamentals, do the easy things well, do it consistently. And we had this moniker of get in the river. That was the theme of last year, get in the river. Well, I want to go back to 850 BC, and I want to continue the story of Elisha and Naaman. Naaman is healed of his skin disorder. He goes back to Syria, and he has a wonderful relationship with the nation of Israel. It's interesting. I planned to do this talk last year, and you think of the events going on today. I don't believe there are coincidences. Syria has a great relationship with Israel for 50 years. But things fall apart. Naaman is no longer one of the leading commanders of Syria. Tension exists between Syria and Israel. Israel now has a new king. His name is Joash. And Elisha is now 50 years older than he was when he healed Naaman. Elisha is basically dying. He's on his deathbed. And the king of Israel, Joash, learns of it, and he rushes with his chariot, and he meets Elisha in his house, and he says, "O father of Israel, please don't go." And he's begging him because the Syrians had just won 3 significant battles and taken land from the nation of Israel. And he's worried about the future of the kingdom. And Elisha's on his deathbed, and he tells King Joash, he says, "Bring me your bow and arrow." He says, "Open the windows of my bedroom to the east and bring it to me." And he says, "Draw your bow." And so Joash the king draws his bow. Elisha puts his hands around Joash the king as an old man on his deathbed, helps him pull back the bow, and fires the arrow out the window. And as it goes through the window and strikes the ground, Elisha proclaims, "There goes the victory of Yahweh. There goes the victory of God." And it gave Joash the motivation and the courage to know that he could do what he needed to do to lead Israel. But before Elisha passed away, he looked at Joash and he said, "Now I want you to take the rest of the arrows that were still in the quiver that you've not shot, and I want you to strike the ground with them." Joash, okay. He takes the arrows and he strikes the ground once, twice, 3 times he strikes the ground. And Elisha is angry with him, and he says, "Why did you strike the ground 3 times? And Joash thought he was frustrated because he had struck the ground more than once, but it was the opposite. Elisha said, "Why didn't you strike the ground 6 times? Because you only struck the ground 3 times, your victories will be good, but they will not be great." The point Elisha was making to Naaman is that you had too small of a vision for what you were able to do as king. And if last year's theme was get in the river, this year's theme, I want it to be to think bigger, to think more about your business, to not settle for just what you expect or what you know, but to ask yourself the question, what if I could? What if we could? to look out into the future and truly wonder if it was possible, what are the things that we could build? What are the things we could do in our business? So our theme this year is, what if we could? State of the firm, the question that I typically ask as I'm presenting is, what is the state of our firm? And so I want to give you a couple highlights of what is going on at Valmark. We're very fortunate. If you look behind me, we have record levels of assets. We have a record level of life insurance premium year to date. We have a record life settlement year, the most financial plans we've ever created, the highest member office satisfaction we've ever had, the highest staff engagement we've ever had, and we're celebrating 60 years as an organization. You're welcome. When you look at the question, this is one of the most important questions we ask in the survey of our member firms. We make the statement, do you agree or disagree? Does Valmark improve my business and contribute to my success? And 97% of you believe that Valmark is essential to improving your business and being a major part of your success. And our team is thinking, what if we could? What if we could get to 100%? And I believe that we will. Thinking back to what was possible 5 years ago, we started this member office survey and we asked you to rate each of our departments that we work with, or that you work with, I'm sorry. And 5 years ago, you gave very good scores. You can see some of them were larger than others, smaller than others, but I'm happy to report to you that over the last 5 years, every single department at Valmark, according to you, has gotten better than it was 5 years ago. But this year, I want to flip the question, because every year I get up here and I talk about Valmark. I talk about our firm, I talk about our services, and I'll work a little bit of us into this, but I really want to flip this around, and I want to turn this to you. And I want to ask the question, what is the state of your firm? And I want you to think about the backdrop of Joash and this idea that he had too small of a vision for his kingdom. And he never went on to realize what it could have been because he couldn't think big enough. And so as you go through this, or as you hear this presentation, as I'm asking you the state of your firm, I want you to think about, what if you could? There's a great line by James Thurber. He says that it's better to know some of the questions than all of the answers. And so today I'm going to spend most of my time asking questions. I have data that I'm going to share with you, but it's mostly in the context of asking you questions, because here's the thing. I don't know what the right answer is for your business. Most of you are smarter than I am. You certainly know your business is better than I do. I'm going to pause and ask some questions, and I'm going to ask you. This is your homework assignment. Don't take a ton of notes. I'm happy to share these slides with you, but I would like, as I go through this presentation, you to be jotting down a couple of the key questions that you know that you need to answer for your business. The framework with which I'm going to ask these questions is about building a 10 times better financial services practice. And there are 6 dimensions that we're going to talk about. I'll move through them pretty quickly, but we're going to talk about profitability. We're going to talk about business development, planning process, fintech, risk management, and succession plan. And the reason I don't want you writing all these down is because we have a tool that I would love to share with you. Anyone who wants, I'd be happy to have a personal phone call with you or Caleb Nitz, who runs our practice management area, and we would love to go through all 6 of these dimensions, and they're really just 6 categories of questions that you answer for yourself to truly assess, how is your business doing? This particular scorecard is for a CFP type firm. We have scorecards for life insurance specialty firms as well as our larger institutions that work with us for life insurance. So regardless of where your particular discipline is, I believe we have a scorecard that can help you process key questions about, what is the state of your firm? Today, Larry tends to focus a little more on insurance. I tend to talk a little bit more about investments. So this particular scorecard that I'm going to work through happens to be the one that we use with our CFP firms. Final word before I get into the 6 dimensions. I mentioned earlier, I'm not the smartest guy, but I like to read things that smart people write. And so throughout the presentation, I'm going to mention some statistics, I'm going to mention some questions, I'm going to pull some facts, and I want to make sure and attribute them to people who are actually doing the real work. And these are some of the sources that the information comes from that I'm going to share with you this morning. So number 1, profitability. And I think the first honest question about how is your firm doing, what is the state of your firm, what is the state of your profitability, is to be honest about if you know your profitability. I wouldn't take it for granted. It's amazing how many firms I talk to, and you really aren't running a business from the standpoint of financial statements. You're really managing cash flow out of you have a business checking account, but the truth is, there really is no financial statements. And so the question that I would ask for you is, do you have legitimate financial statements? Are you interested in creating legitimate financial statements? We can help you do that. We've got an incredible team in commissions, and with the power that we have with MyPay, we're able to help a lot of firms create templates for establishing really good cash flow statements, but in particular income statements, which I think are essential to answering the question, how am I doing for profit? Well, it'd be good to know if you're making any first. Scorecard, this is something that Valmark uses. It's our member scorecard, and essentially what we do is we go through, our company scorecard, not our member scorecard, and there are 4 dimensions on this, and each of the dimensions have 5 key measurables. We talk about our customers, we talk about our staff, we talk about our insurance business, and we talk about our investments business. And we've boiled down to basically 5 key metrics in each of those 4 areas. And this is what our leadership team looks at every month. Of course, there's more than this behind what makes Valmark work, but when you measure everything, you're really measuring nothing. And so I would ask you the question, do you have a scorecard? What does it look like? What are you measuring? Be happy to share our scorecard with you. Ours won't fit perfectly, but it will give you the idea of how you might be able to incorporate this into your business. So this is a tool that we use regularly. The other thing I would ask you is, do you really understand the segmentation of your book of business? Charles Schwab put out a benchmarking study this summer, and not surprisingly, they said about 50 to 60% of the clients that you serve have assets with you of less than $1 million. But not surprisingly, that only makes up about 20% of your revenue. And so one of the questions, if we're talking about profitability, is really understanding where does the money come from in the clients that you serve, and how are you aligning services to be commensurate with the revenue that those relationships are generating. I can tell you, Randy Schuster made a comment in that video, and I appreciated it. He said, when you come to Valmark, they treat you the same when they're recruiting you as they do when you join, and that is a big part of what we do. But I'll tell you, as much as we treat you all the same, you probably aren't surprised to know that we do know, in terms of revenue for customers, we track these things because it matters, right? We treat everyone the same, but it's commensurate with the value that's created. We have to know these things. You have to know these things. And everyone talks about it, but my experience is few people do it well. Or they go through and they do it halfway and they segment their business and they create A's and B's and C's or platinum or gold or whatever. But they really don't then modify any of the business model to address the reality that there's a pretty big segmentation in the business. And you can't really get to profitability in any real meaningful, scalable way if everybody gets everything the exact same. Another big part of profitability is people. At least for Valmark, I think the same is true for you. In service industries, the people cost is the most expensive cost of running the business. Typically runs anywhere from 50 to 80% of your businesses is spent on people. It's not only the most money, it's the hardest part of the business, in my opinion. It's the things that I get asked the most questions about when I'm talking to you about your business. And so I would ask the question, obviously, are you really spending and being intentional about the work that you're doing, recruiting in really good talent? Valmark has a right fit solution. We've hired a number of people, but I'm honestly surprised that more people don't take advantage of it, especially when I hear when I'm at this meeting how many of you are struggling with staffing. And so on one hand, profitability it's important to address the biggest expense in the business if you want to increase your profitability, and that is making sure you have good people, you're getting value for those people, you're recruiting those people. But I think the bigger question about hiring people, because hiring is very difficult, I think it's getting a little easier, but it has been very difficult for the last 3 years. And tons of energy has gone into that. How do I get new people? How do I get new people? And the biggest question I would ask you is, before you worry about getting new people, I would be really sure about how you keep your existing people. I would be asking myself questions about what am I doing differently today to retain my best people than I was doing differently before the labor markets truly changed. So for us, and we've been doing this a long time, and we've, I feel like, been fairly employee-centric, but over the last couple years, we've had to do a lot of different things. More investments in our engaged team, more investments if you follow us on social media, the things that we're doing to build camaraderie and community, finding the right line between work from home and work in the office, going through a comprehensive salary study this past summer, and making significant financial changes to people's compensation package. My question for you, again, is what are you doing to keep the people that you have? I think that's even more important than the question I'm mostly getting asked, which is how do I get new people? And the best hire you can make is keeping the person or people that you already have. Those are some of the things on profitability. There's some good questions in there. I hope that you take those with you. And again, I've got that scorecard, and it'll walk you through those type of questions. And I encourage you just to be really honest on that assessment of how are you doing running your business, and is it as profitable as it could be? And if it's not, what are the key questions that you need to be asking yourself about how do I make it even better? Let's talk about business development. Business development really begins, in my opinion, by understanding who your target customer is. And I think most of you do understand your target customer, but in my experience, when I ask you to tell me about your target customer, it takes a pretty long time. It makes me believe you're not entirely sure who your target customer is. And I would just encourage you that the more focused you can be, the better you will be at finding the things you're looking for. If you were, Ali is in the front row, him and I talked about this a year ago, and I use this regularly. He and I were talking, and we said, if you woke up tomorrow and there was a new law in America, and you could only work with clients that look like this, and you define what this is, but just hypothetically put constraints on it, put boundaries on it, and say, tomorrow you wake up, and this is the only kind of client you're legally allowed to work with, I believe every one of you would figure out a way to be successful working with that client. But sometimes, because we can do everything for everyone at any time, it becomes very difficult to execute on the reality of knowing who your target is and being intentional in everything you do about attracting that particular market segment. So for Valmark, we're not perfect. We do a lot of things wrong. We try very hard to be specific about who it is we're going after. If you look behind me on the screen, it all starts with we want to work with highly ethical financial entrepreneurs. That is, if you're not either one of those things, if you're not ethical or you're not independent and entrepreneurial, it's just not a good culture fit, and so that's just a deal breaker out of the gate. But after that first level of filter, there are 3 things that you often hear us talk about. We want to work with firms at the intersection of the advisory business, the broker-dealer business, and the insurance business. And if you are just in 1 or 2 of those businesses, it's just not a great fit for us. So we really focus in on our target market of this is who we're going to go after, and we're really going to go after about 8 to 10 of them a year. That is our focus. From that, our strategies, the way we take from our present state, how we're making money today, to our future state, how we go from what was once $20 million of gross revenue to $200 million of gross revenue, as you heard in yesterday's opening video, is we do 4 simple things consistently well. We focus on inviting select member firms who are in the bullseye of those 3 circles to be a part of this group. We focus on helping the existing firms that are already here grow your business. When you grow, we grow, there's alignment. When I shared with you that Valmark is having a record year, you were clapping, but the reality is you're clapping for yourself. Our business is an extension of yours. You have record assets under management. You have record life settlements, life insurance, so congratulations to you. This is our strategy. Bring more of you in selectively and focus on helping you grow Around the office, people know I call this getting more juice out of the oranges, helping you grow the business. The other thing we do is we really focus on optimizing recruiting and retaining staff. Larry talked about the University of Akron really having a specific strategy of who we're going to recruit, not only in terms of customers, but who we're going to target in terms of who we're going to hire, because we could do the same thing hiring people as we would recruiting people if it was just, well, let's just post an ad and hope we get someone that fits. It doesn't mean it always works, but we go out very intentionally every time we hire saying, this is the culture index profile we're looking for. This is the profile of people who tend to be successful in these kind of roles. We go out there very specific, knowing what we're looking for, and we typically do a better job of finding it when we know what we're looking for. Last thing that we do is we continue to develop unique processes to help you grow your business. Chris talked about that with IRE yesterday. We'll continue to innovate on those things. What am I saying all this? This is our one-page growth strategy, and it's all built on EOS. Operationally, this is how we run our business. Point being, if you're going to talk about business development, you really have to have a clear target of what you're trying to do, right? Most of the things I talk about are not complicated, but they're difficult to do, and so I'm asking you the question, who is your target customer? Can you create it on one page? Who they are, how you serve them, what is unique about it. Larry talked about this. I won't belabor the point. Referrals are better than marketing. We know this. The data says this. But I want to draw your attention to two things. It's not just referrals. It's having a plan to get referrals, but it's even more nuanced than that. It's having a difference in a plan of how you're going to get referrals from existing clients, as well as having a plan of how you're going to get referrals from business partners. You should have a plan for each of them. They're very different markets, the things you talk about, the ways that you incentivize them, the types of things that matter to them in terms of what is in it for them. How do you create alignment? So I would encourage you, amidst all the money and energy and time we spend marketing, sitting down and putting together a plan to answer the question, what is my referral strategy? Have I written it down? And what is my referral strategy of how I approach my existing clients? And what is my referral strategy of how I approach my business partners, centers of influence? Interesting data when you look at this from existing clients. So top performing firms, according to the Schwab study, who have written referral plans with existing clients, got 1.6 times assets, so closing in on twice as many. But what's even, I think, more impactful is looking at the firms who have written referral plans for their business partners, about 5 times the number of assets. What is your plan? These things aren't hard, but it's important to be asking the question and answering the question. Another thing, very simple concept, but again, sometimes they're so simple we don't do them. Really understanding the lifetime value of a customer. And if you do basic math and you say, on average, I'm managing $1 million for a client, I charge about 1% fee. That's about $10,000 a year, and I'm going to keep this client on average for 25 years. McKinsey data says that financial advisors, even the bad ones, keep their clients on average 95% of the time. It's a very sticky business. It's a great business. But when you do the math on this and you look at it and you say, it's worth roughly $250,000, the lifetime value of this customer, the question I would ask is, how much are you willing to pay for that today? And I think it's important to think that in terms of dollars. What are you willing to pay for that? Because I do think it does take money to do these things. So if you're going to put a referral strategy together, if you're going to do some marketing, you do have to put that in the budget. You do have to spend that. You do have to be intentional about it. But I think this is almost as important to ask, how much am I willing to pay of my time? Like, how much of my time am I willing to pay to get the future earnings of what's worth $250,000 today? And so to me, that's a question where you have to go back and ask yourself and say, how much of my time am I willing to prioritize to be focused exclusively on getting new clients? Because every one of you, not every one of you, most of you that I talk to, you understand the highest and best use of your time. You intellectually understand it, but most of you truly struggle with spending the majority of your time doing that part of the business. You get sucked in to running the business, and when you really think about $250,000 per client, if that was real money, and you said, what would I be willing to do in my calendar to prioritize the fact that every time I get a yes on one of these, it is worth $250,000. Every 4 or 5 of these represents $1 million of future revenue for my business. If you really believed that was true, and the data says that it is, I believe that you would prioritize and focus your time differently. And so much of it is just about being intentional. You are successful at what you do. Most of you, when you set out to do something, you achieve it. And I would just encourage you to take something as simple as this basic math calculation and say, you either believe that or you don't. It doesn't make sense to me to say, I believe this and I'm just not going to do it, because I don't know anyone who wouldn't be focused on getting a $250,000 yes on average. As business development, great questions in the scorecard. I'd be happy to go over it with you on the phone. Those are just some of them that we talk about. So let's talk about financial planning process. And the financial planning process is one that I think most of us do well. And I would say 10 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, but certainly 10 years ago, financial planning became an essential part of what you are doing, what we're providing services to help you do. Chris did a great presentation yesterday. He talked about us rolling out Risk 12 years ago. The reality is, though, so is pretty much everyone else at this point. Most people are doing comprehensive financial planning. In fact, 93% of the people who took the Schwab survey said they're doing financial planning. What's interesting is about 10 to 15% are charging for it. So I just asked the question to you, do you charge for it? What do you charge for it? Do you have a plan of how you describe what it is that you do, why it is different than managing the assets, why you've come to the price that you've come? I don't know what the right answer is for you, but I can tell you, as crazy as it would be to not do financial planning today, I think it will be just as crazy in years to come by saying, you don't charge for this? I think our data is a little better, but our data is roughly about half of you charge for it. And so I would just ask you the question, do you want to make more money? Do you want to charge for doing financial planning? I think it's a strategy that Jim Corbett, he's no longer here, he retired, but he had a great line. He used to say, ideas have value, and that's why I charge fees. Putting a price on intellectual property, putting a price on time, putting a price on being a true advisor, navigating with clients. Speaking of putting a value on this, I've shared this a number of times, but Vanguard did a nice job on a study where they said that the average financial advisor produces about 300 basis points of excess returns for their clients than if clients manage their portfolio on their own. And when they broke down where does the 300 basis points of value come from, they basically said 1/2 of all of that value comes from spending time with you and you just being a good behavioral coach for them. It doesn't come from your ability to asset allocate better than the next guy. It doesn't come from your ability to rebalance the portfolio or even to do the sophisticated withdrawal calculations of knowing which buckets to spend. All important, but none of it statistically the most valuable of what it is that you offer for your clients. And so the question that I would have for you is, how are you going to spend more time with your clients? And in a perfect world, I think you would hire another version of you. I think that would be the best strategy that you could come up with. But the reality is there are two things. There aren't many people like you to hire, and even if you could, you would not get along with them. And so hiring another version of you is not a realistic strategy, but I'll tell you what is a realistic strategy is being intentional about freeing up half of your time. Because statistically, if you free up half of your time, it is the equivalent of hiring another one of you, right? In terms of the actions that produce the highest client-facing value, which is spending time with them, behavioral coaching. Nick Murray's going to talk after that, and he's going to, I assume he's going to spend a lot of time talking about these things in terms of the real value that you add, saving clients from themselves. And so I would just ask you, you're not going to hire another one of you, but if you were intentional about going through your calendar and say, I am only going to do these things, it would have the equivalent impact of hiring another one of you in the company. And before you say, I am pretty good at that, my experience is you're not that good at it. You know why? Because most of the time that I talk with you, it's because you're involved micromanaging some aspect of your cases and your financial plans and solving your insurance, that you trust your people, but you really just want to do all the work yourself as well. And it is not, in general, a super efficient model. If you were really intentional about letting go, if you were really intentional about leveraging the unique processes that Valmark has to offer, I truly believe that you would have the ability to find double your capacity, and you could focus on the highest and best use of your time. And so the question is this something you want to do? Again, you will do it if you want to do it. I don't know if you want to do it. I don't know if you think it's worth it that you should do it. I believe it's worth it. I think the data supports it that it's worth it. But truly finding a way to double your capacity to doing the things that you do uniquely well is going to have a significant impact on your business. And we continue to build processes to help you do that. Not perfectly, but there are a lot of things that we do to this day that you could still outsource to us, and we talk internally and still scratch our heads at times and say, why don't people outsource more of this to us? It's your business. Make your own decisions. Just asking the question, is it something you're interested in? Is it something you find valuable? And frankly, is it something you're going to take the time and do? Let's talk about fintech for a bit, and I had planned to talk a lot more about this, but I thought Doug and Jeff did a great job at the compliance session. And essentially, I want to draw your attention to two things, the two extremes on this graph. So over here, you see that basically 100% of top performing firms are doing e-signature, e-workflows. I mean, this is not something that's any longer your leading edge. This is, if you're not doing this, you're falling behind. Basically, 100% of firms that are in the investment business, at least, are doing these things. And so occasionally, we'll still get questions about, well, I don't want to pay for this laser app fee, or I don't want to pay for e-signature, it costs $50, and I just would encourage you to just stop. I mean, do you hear yourself? You can afford it. You're going to be okay. Spend the hundreds of dollars, and it might be hundreds of dollars per month. Spend the money, adopt the process, come into 2024, and do the business. On the other extreme, though, over here is texting, which 37% of firms who took the survey said that they have texting solutions for their clients, which another way of saying that is 2/3 of them are lying. Because I don't believe for a second that you're not texting your clients. And it comes down to the question of, is it important for you to solve this problem? And so I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this. Like I said, Jeff and Doug did a very good job. But with electronic communication, the reality is this is easy money for the SEC. FINRA will follow suit. There are small firms being fined hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. These are the things that you can have a footfall. You can't control everything in your business, right? You hope to control some things, you hope to influence some things, but the reality is this is something you have 100% control of. And so my question that I would ask for you is, who in your firm is going to own fixing this problem for you? There's an email, shield@valmarkfg.com. I don't expect you to understand and follow every point of the 4 elements that Doug and Jeff went through during the compliance lunch, but I know that if it is important to you, You will make this someone in your office's primary goal for 2024. And you will say the primary way that you are going to be measured, and there will be financial rewards. We'll do carrots, sticks, whatever your particular method is in your office. You can assign this to somebody and say, I want to be great at understanding and managing my shield. I think it's one of the most important decisions that you can make at a business owner. And whether it's not sending millions of dollars away, which is going to be, you're going to be on the hook for all of it, or whether it's the unforced error of texting. And when I say texting, I want to make sure that you understand we're not just talking, and I want to say the regulators are not just talking about texting your clients. I don't think most of you are texting your clients securities-related activity. I mean, that seems like pretty obvious. You shouldn't be talking about placing trades or making recommendations over a text message. But I am talking about you texting your colleagues in your office. Hey, is the financial plan ready for the Joneses? I'm going to be in late. Can you pull all the documents? I'd like to sit down and go over their portfolio with them. Now, you could argue, well, I don't know, is that really securities correspondence? Doug will tell you, based on his experience, and he and Neil just came back meeting with regulators, that they are going to want to lump that in. So I would say to you, if you are realistic about the amount of texting that you are doing with your colleagues, with your coworkers, with your business partners, I think that is where you're going to get burned. That's actually where the executives from Cambridge, when they had their phones seized, it was advisor to advisor texting that ultimately resulted in the millions of dollars of fines. So again, I'm not going to belabor this point any more than that. I would just ask you, one, do you really want to solve this problem as a business owner? I think it's one of the most important problems you should be focused on. That's my opinion. I don't own your business. You have to answer that question. And if the answer is yes, the question for you is, who are you going to assign in your office to own this problem? Make it their goal for next year and reward them appropriately for being successful. Let's talk about risk management. 10x practice, you got to be able to be great at risk management. And I think that we are pretty good at risk management. And we've started over the years, we've done things like diversification 2.0. Still one of my favorite graphics. If you don't regularly have a conversation with clients about, hey, diversification used to just be about asset classes, but it really is about tax registrations. And the thing about this asset allocation, or this particular allocation, we can't do this later. The decisions we make today are the decisions that we have to live with for the rest of our lives. So Michael Moya's got a great presentation later today. Chris Finnefrock gave a presentation yesterday. And my point would just be, when you're thinking about risk management, and I'm a simple guy, I like to keep things, right up front. I think this is one of the most powerful graphics that you can show, the concept of diversification 2.0. Another one, I didn't know Chris was going to put this in his presentation, but this goes back to 12 years ago. It still, to me, is the single best page at helping a client understand, are you prepared to move from an asset allocation to an income allocation? It's one of those things that we've done it so much, we stop using it because it's so good. In my experience, nothing is more effective than being able to sit with a client and say, oh, no, we're not talking about asset allocation. How's your income allocation? Of course, what's an income allocation? Oh, to diversify against the unique risks you face while you're withdrawing money instead of saving it. No one's talked with you about that before? This, to me, and they're used to this idea of a 401k plan and having conservative to aggressive allocations. To me, this is the single tool if you're looking to do more risk management and integrating, because I think the risk, just to bring this full circle, is, look, the asset management business is a great business. It is the primary engine in 2023 in terms of Valmark's profit. We love the business. We love charging fees. It's a great business. But what separates you apart from every other asset manager is your ability to have these conversations. And my fear is that over time, we get so used to the reoccurring revenue, we get so used to just managing the assets that we leave behind what might only be 5 or 10 or 20% of the conversation, but it really is the glue that holds the clients. It's what differentiates you from every private bank, from every significant wealth manager, from every RIA roll-up who can do more in terms of asset management and charge less money than you can. And so to me, not leaving behind these essential risk management questions are really important. Here's one for you that are investment-focused firms. And I think this is a powerful question when you're thinking about risk management if you're serious about wanting to do life insurance business. I think we're pretty good in terms of risk management at doing income risk management with annuities. I think we're pretty good at doing long-term care solutions as part of our investment business. But if you are an asset manager and you want to sell meaningful life insurance, I'm going to share with you a simple question that I ask my friends, and I eat at my own restaurant with Larry. I do a few cases a year, 6-figure premiums, meaningful stuff. And they're buddies, so don't worry, I'm not stealing any of your clients. But here's the question I ask them, and it's very simple. There anybody in your book of business who happens to own their own business, and it doesn't even have to be worth a lot of money. They're just an entrepreneur, and they own their own business, and I ask them the question, what do you think about 10% annual returns? You can fill in the number. It could be 7%, it could be 12%. The point is, what do you think about 10% returns? And every single time I've asked this question to anyone who owns a business, they say, that's terrible. That's terrible. Why is that terrible? Because they can make a lot more money investing in their business, right? And I always say, boy, I hope so, because that would make no sense if you could take capital and put it in a publicly traded company and do nothing and make the same amount of money as if you took money and put it in your business and went to work every day and busted your butt. Like, that would make no sense if you could make the same amount of money in both of those businesses. So I hope that you can make a lot more. What do you typically make on a return on capital? And they'll usually say something like 15% or 20% or 25% is their target. And the smaller, a lot of times, the bigger the number. And so what I'll usually tell them is, you definitely should not have me manage your money. You could argue, well, there's some diversification you could do, but realistically, the best use of your money is to keep investing it in your business. And they always feel good about that because there are so many people, financial advisors, who are trying to get their money from them, and they're trying to pitch all these crazy investments. And my experience, my friends who own businesses, whether they're big, whether they're small, they appreciate it when you essentially say, what do you think of 10% returns? Oh, I think those are crap. I said, yeah, they are, honestly. I'd keep your money. I'd keep investing in your business. And they're okay, yeah, good. I'm glad you're honest with me. I appreciate you telling me that. And then I have my Columbo moment, and I say, have you ever thought about what your business is going to be worth if it compounds at 20% a year? Because they're the ones who gave that number, not me. What's your business worth today? I don't care if it's worth $2 million, $5 million, $10 million. If someone's 40, 50 years old, and you compound a number at 20%, that business is going to be worth a significant amount of money. And none of them think about that. Well, I'll say none of them. The people that are in my circles, they do not think about, wow, my business could be worth 50 or 100 or 150 million. It's harder if you're in a financial planning business. I know most of your clients are mass affluent, but I believe you go through your book and you have 5 to 10 people who own small businesses that if you ask them this question, what do you think about these stock market returns? They're going to tell you they make way more money in their business. And when you take their own number and say, have you ever thought about compounding your business at that growth rate for this many years? Almost none of them have. And then all of a sudden, they've got a problem. And the problem is, this country is not great at transferring businesses and wealth. And when they die, they're going to have 9 months to pay an estate tax that they never thought they would have to pay. And this is not exactly worrying about legislation. This is just simple math with their own inputs and variables that they came up with. And they've never thought about that. And then the last question I asked them, and I took this from Michael Donald. I've never told him I use this, but you've helped me do a little bit of life insurance. And the question I asked him is, well, if you could lock in today a line of credit that was guaranteed to be available the moment you needed it, and it avoided the need to liquidate any holdings in the future, it avoided the need to go to the bank and hope the economic environment is a good one for borrowing money, and avoided the need to try to navigate tight underwriting because you're not going to be here, and most banks don't want to lend money when the primary person who owned and ran the business is gone. If you could lock in today those terms, and that this line of credit would never need to be repaid, and it was 100% tax-free, and it costs roughly 1% to 2% a year, would you be interested? In my experience, every single business owner that I've asked that question to has said, of course. So the point of this is, even if you are in the investment business, my experience, there is an opportunity to do meaningful risk management in your business. And yes, it should be about the traditional risk management that you're doing with retirement planning. And yes, you should be planning for long-term care. Those are absolutely. But I'm talking about there are some basic opportunities for you to incorporate meaningful life insurance sales into your business. And you do not have to be this amazing estate planner, amazing tax strategist. You can ask some basic questions of your clients who own small businesses, and their own answers are going to lead them to the conclusion that, yeah, I would be really interested in that. So the last thing I want to talk about is business continuity. We've talked about 5 of the 6 dimensions on the scorecard. Business continuity, I think, is the hardest one, and naturally, I don't have an answer for you. So I think everybody wants to answer the question, but the reality is, while you can't answer the question, there are things that you can be doing today that you control and that you at least influence to help make that answer more evident when it needs to be. So let me give you a couple examples. The average financial advisor in the United States is 56 years old. 40% say they have no succession plan at all. And yet roughly 40% plan to retire in the next 10 years. I don't know how that's going to work, but they're saying they don't have a plan and they say that they're going to retire. I actually think FINRA did a pretty nice job in its regulatory notice last year saying, look, they gave 7, but there are really 4 strategies that you can use to have a robust succession plan. Number 1, you can sell. It's a legitimate strategy. Number 2, you can have a junior advisor. You can bring in someone that you're going to mentor and essentially do an internal succession. You could have a team-based approach, right? Multiple advisors, cross-trained support staff, paraplanners, so that it is not dependent on one person. And a lot of our larger firms have this model, and it is a really good natural succession plan. Or at a minimum, you could have a contingency plan that essentially says, look, I'm not 100% sure what I'm going to do, but at a minimum, I need to make sure this is done so that if I don't have the opportunity to do any more planning, I've at least got a minimally viable solution in place. And so FINRA does a nice job. There's a regulatory notice. I'd be happy to send it to you. And they honestly outline some really good practical steps of how to solve this problem. But I think this is a powerful slide, and this came from Financial Advisor IQ, which is a service of the Financial Times out of London. And essentially what they said is 1 out of every 10 financial advisors are going to sell their business, and 9 out of every 10 financial advisors are going to have an internal succession plan. So this is the statistics. This data was gathered this summer. This is fresh data. Financial Times has an office in New York, so this is an American study. American financial advisors, basically 9 out of 10 financial advisors are going to end up having an internal succession plan, not selling their business. So some of the questions that I think are important about that is really understanding, what is your timeline? To me, this is, I love this quote. This came from their research. Very few know when they want to retire. A lot of folks say they're going to retire in 2 to 3 years, but they've been saying that for 10 years. And to me, I mean, just think about this for a minute. I don't know how to solve your succession problem. I don't. We are working on some things that I think will continue to be helpful. Ken Inger is here. A number of you, I think probably 10 firms have used Ken with Caleb, and we've done internal successions that involve sales. They involve carrying notes. They involve third-party bank financing. We've done a number of plans. We're also working on some things we hope that we'll be able to talk about in days to come. But I want you to think about why I don't know how to solve your financial or your succession plan. I do want you to think about when you come and catch me in the hallway, say, Caleb, there's just one problem. I just need help. I just need to figure out my succession plan. And to me, the first 2 or 3 questions I ask, most of you don't know it would be like having a financial plan for someone and they have no idea when they want to retire. They have no idea how much income they're going to need when they retire, and they have no idea how much they have saved, and all they need you to do is build a financial plan. But that's the reality of the succession plan. It's, yeah, I think I want to do this, but there isn't any intentionality on this is my goal with it, this is my timeline with it. And the number one reason that people say that is the lack of a successor. And I think that is a huge problem, but I also know at the same time that there's a ton of young financial advisors who really want to get into this business. Valmark has 25 interns. We've successfully placed, I believe, over the course of Valmark, we're in double digits, 10 to 15 interns who are now the succession plan at member firms of Valmark. But here's one of the key things that I just want to encourage you with as the founder and the owner and the principal of the firm, that Gen 2 and Gen 3 will never get ready until you start equity sharing and begin to train them to not just be great employees, but to be great partners. And there's so many times when you think, man, this generation, they just don't take ownership. They just don't do this. They just don't do this. They just don't do this. The reality is no one is actually moving towards making that a reality. People talk about it, well, they're going to get equity. Well, they're not going to step up until they have some clarity on what it is you're asking them to do. And as you read through this whole study, the primary issue is that the young people, they want to be part of the succession plan, but they have no idea what you're going to do because you have no idea what you're going to do. So what is my point of saying all this? My point of saying all this is your business. I don't know what the right answer is for you, but you have to make some important decisions about what you want to have happen. And the moment you get clarity about what you want, I promise you, the tools and solutions will emerge. When you are intentional about what it is you're trying to accomplish, you will see, oh, this is a good fit for this role. This person has these capabilities. But so often we don't know where to start, and it's almost like we're looking for a young person to like magically show up and they're just going to somehow be good enough to take over for me. It's like that. You're in charge. You're the architect. It is your company. If you are clear about what you would like to see happen, I promise you the tools and resources will emerge. We'll help you some of the way, but you will find what you're looking for when you are intentional about what you want to see. So here are just a couple closing my thoughts on preparing for succession, because you can't control this, right, in terms of getting the right person, right? You can't control exactly what economic cycle. You can't do those things, but these are 5 things that you can do. And the nice thing for me, there's alignment between whether you end up selling the business or whether you end up having an internal succession. I believe all 5 of these things are good for both of those strategies. So there's total alignment in this. And the first thing is to really maintain real financial statements that are regularly shared and discussed with your team. I talked about earlier, do you have financial statements? The next question I would have is, do you share these with your team? I am shocked at how many of you do not bring your team into understanding how you're keeping score in your business, how you're defining success. It is really important that you have financial statements and that you are creating an environment where you're teaching people who you hope to be your successor to think and act like an owner of that business. They cannot do that if they have no idea what is going on financially in the business. The second thing is documenting roles and processes and having a limited number of solutions and roles. So many of the firms that, as I talk with, it's a little bit of, well, what's their role? Well, they do a little bit of that, they do a little bit of this, they do a little bit of this. Okay, well, what are kind of the services you offer? Well, we do a little bit of this, we do a little bit of that. And I would just encourage you, the more that you can be precise about the roles that the people in your company play, and I mean taking time to write down, and whether it's you or assigning this to someone, who's the person in your company that you can assign this to in 2024 to say, I really want to have documented roles and job descriptions for everyone who works here. It is really important whether you end up doing an internal succession or if you end up selling, it will only make your business worth more money. We already talked about this. I won't belabor the point. Clear target markets, focus services. Number 4, have business growth beyond the founder. And I think this is, my experience is everyone wants someone to come in and help grow the business, but no one really wants to turn over the things that are necessary to help people actually become front stage, to help grow. I think is one of the things that Larry's dad did incredibly well with him was being able to say, you're out in front, I'm going to take a step back. He stayed in the business for another 30 years, but Larry was out in front of that business. And so really plays into number 5, which is let go of something, even if slowly. I think if you can do these 5 things, it's not only important to moving towards internal succession, but it will help you if you end up needing to sell. It will make the business more valuable. A lot of reading, a lot of research. These are 5 simple things that you have control of that you can do if you want to do it. So my question for you is, do you want to? Because you will if you want to. So here's my closing thought. And it is this. 800 BC, Joash strikes the ground 3 times, and Elisha says, why didn't you think bigger? Why didn't you think, what if it was possible? What if we could have that business development strategy? Or what if we could have this type of recruiting or continuity plan? Or what if we could in terms of marketing, right? And I think one of the things that he was missing in all of this was he was fighting from a place of defense because they had lost three regions of land. And so he struck the ground 3 times because he believed, man, it would just be so great if I could get back what was taken from me. And Elisha the prophet was saying, no, imagine if it was twice as big. Imagine if you could do 6 times. And so my question is, I wonder what the world would be like today if in 800 BC, Joash had the vision to take on a bigger role for Israel, to take on a bigger kingdom. I don't know. I'm not a historian. I'm not a prophet. But I wonder, when I read that story, there was a limit in how Israel could address its enemies in 900 BC, 800 BC. But I think it came to a lack of vision. And so the transition for you is, what could your business be like if you were able to take the 3 strikes on the ground and make it 6 strikes on the ground? What could your business be like if you didn't just think defensively, but you were able to think offensively and think, what is possible? And my last question for you is, who can you partner with to do this? There is someone in your firm, I promise you, who would love to be a part of this vision the way that Joash had Elisha. There is an Elisha or a Joash. One of you can be that role, and there's someone else in your firm. And I would encourage you, when you get back to the office, that you would get to that scorecard out, that you would write down and make goals for 2024, that you would go through and make it a point to say, I'm not going to address all 6 of these things. That's a lot. But I will prioritize the top most important things that I want to address in my business, and I'm going to write them down, and I'm going to find at least one partner in my firm who is going to do it with me, And we are going to keep score of that with scorecards, and we are going to create incentives and rewards for doing that. And I truly believe if you are intentional about doing that, when we come back together next year, you will be surprised at how incredibly successful your business has come with intentional planning, with a vision that answers the question, what if we could? Thank you.